to Strength in Numbers, the podcast where we show you that together we can overcome any obstacle. Join us as we bring on world-renowned experts in the field of grit, determination, and perseverance. Lean on us for a prosperous future together. Here's your hosts, Colonel Tim Nye and Neal Keohane.
Welcome to Strength in Numbers. My name is Colonel Retired Tim Nye, and I am joined, as I always am, by my good friend and co-founder, Neal Keohane. Boy, Neal, I'll tell you what, couldn't have done that any worse. So, because it's recording, we'll just do it again.
Exactly.
Welcome to Strength in Numbers. My name is Colonel Retired Tim Nye, and I am joined today, as I always am, by our primary host and founder of Strength in Numbers, Mr. Patriot himself, Neal Keohane. Today we are speaking with another great American, Mr. John McAleavey. John is a true story of inspiration and one of will and desire to overcome life's toughest challenges. On this day in 1992, John suffered a severe spinal cord injury that left him paralyzed. His paralysis was made worse because he was on the verge of getting his dream job in sports broadcasting. For most humans, that would have been the end of the story, but we're here today with John, who not only hosts his own podcast called the QuadCast Podcast, but he's also been coaching basketball for a number of years. So after his incident, and I don't know whether to call it an accident, an incident, or what, and we'll get into that, a charity fund was created in his name of John McAleavey. Say it for me, John.
McAleavey
Jr. Fund to help other patients pay for the cost of the medical expenses. So I am excited to talk to John and hear this amazing story. But before we get started, we want to take a minute and remind you that every subscription and that every share helps support veterans across the nation. Whether you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, or watching us on YouTube, please hit the subscription button and know that you're making a difference in the life of a veteran. So with that, Johnny, or as Neal calls you, Johnny Mac there, welcome to Strength in Numbers.
Well, I'd like to thank you for having me. This is quite an honor. And as you said, the anniversary, 28 years ago today, I was laying on a surfboard, as I like to call it, headed back up the stairs by the Milburn Short Hills First Aid Squad. And so I'm a little more comfortable today than I was 28 years ago. Let's put it that way.
I was going to say, just because I only see you from waist up, you look perfectly fine to me, perfectly comfortable.
Well, now that is quite the saying. If I'm going to put that on my business cards, I look perfectly great. Colonel, what happened with me is, I'll take you through the story. I remember waking up one night in the hot summer, and I just didn't feel well. And I figured I was living at home in my parents' home. I was sleeping in the basement. I had my room downstairs. And I thought, I had better go upstairs and get mom and dad and think about maybe making a ride up to the hospital because I just don't feel well. Well, I didn't make it to the stairs. I remember feeling faint. And so I got close to the floor, and I must have fainted because I come to, and I had some blood that was dripping down by my eye. I can remember wiping it away. And then from there, I don't remember walking up my basement steps. I don't remember falling down them. But I come to, and I'm at the bottom with my face in the rug and my feet sort of halfway up the stairs. And I'm completely paralyzed from head to toe. And I just remember then my dad, I could hear him coming down the stairs, to see what had happened. And I can just remember whispering to him, don't touch me, don't move me. Because oftentimes you could make a bad situation even worse by moving somebody or touching them. It could make the injury that much worse. And so that is sort of where it all started. And where I am after that, I subsequently found out that I had suffered an injury to my cervical spine at the C3-4 area, which is very, very high. Think of basically the back of your hairline would be where my injury occurred. And also something else, it was clarified as a central cord syndrome accident which again, I knew nothing about spinal cord. That I slept through that class in high school, I guess. But the central portion of your spinal cord is responsible for your upper body motor functions, your arms, hands, fingers. So basically what I like to tell people is I can get up and I can walk wherever I want. I just can't do a bloody thing when I get there because my arms, hands, and fingers don't work. But that's basically my deal. I am, thank God, I'm able to walk. It's not pretty, and over the years, as I've gotten older, it's gotten a lot harder. But I am able to get up and go wherever I want to. But I really and truly have little use of my upper body, and that's my biggest bear. They told me, think of your accident sort of as an upside down para, where paraplegics can use their arms, but their legs don't work. Basically, they said that, think of yourself as an upside down para, meaning my legs would work better than my arms. And they weren't too far off the mark when they told me that all these years ago.
So when you're obviously you've talked to your parents since when they came down the steps, when they heard you fall or however they came down, what did they think had happened? I mean,
something, I guess they had heard the noise because they were wooden steps. My dad had heard the noise, but what turned out to be a lucky break for me is my parents were supposed to be spending time down at the Jersey Shore. We had rented a house, and my dad had an early morning business call that he'd come up early. He and Mom came up the night before, and so lucky for me, if they were not there, I would, I don't even want to think about what would happen.
Yeah, right.
I'd probably still be down on those stairs. But I guess they heard a real loud noise, and that's when, when I told them don't touch me, and then that's when 911 happens, and I hear the sirens, and what I do remember, and when I speak to fellow spinal cord injured folks, is I didn't feel any pain. What I felt, guys, was just complete and utter numbness. Wow. It was just numb, and even thinking about it, to this day, I could throw up because it's that eerie feeling of just, it's just nothing. I mean, I had no feeling at all from the neck down, and it was, it's that thing where you're trying to get up and move. I talked to Eric LeGrand. I'm sure you guys know Eric, who was injured playing football at Rutgers 10 years ago now. And I spoke with him for my podcast a couple weeks back. And he just said, my teammates come around me and, I'm trying to get up, and I'm saying, let's go, let's get back in the huddle. And, your body just is not cooperating. And it's just that eerie numbness and the fact that you want to do it and your mind is telling you to do it, but you can't. It's amazing.
Now, before Neal jumps in there, what have they told you? What caused that? I mean, that just sounds like an act of God, a freak. What precipitated it? I mean, you're healthy one minute and then boom, down the next.
Yeah, Colonel, they attribute it to maybe an acute case of vertigo because, I was never a big drinker. I was never, a drug user. It was never anything like that. That was not something that they even had to test for. The night before I had been out, I'd run about 5 or 6 miles, and, that was something that I would do all the time. I had a good dinner. It wasn't as if I had anything out of the ordinary. And yeah, I think, as you say, it was an act of God and maybe sort of an acute case of vertigo that, attributed to the events that led to, the fall down the stairs. And what was sad about it is there were drips of blood that had made it all the way up the stairs because I must have hit my head on the rug before trying to go up. And the unfortunate thing is, if my weight had shifted one way, it would have pushed the basement door open. I would have ended there on the landing on the upstairs. Unfortunately, obviously, my weight shifted back the other way, and I went back down the stairs.
Wow, that's an amazing story.
Yeah. Well, Colonel, John McAleavey, Johnny Mac, as I call him, we go back to, probably 1991, Johnny.
Yes.
And through your family, but a friend, a brother of mine, Brian Snyder. But I just remember you. I never pressed the story because you were just living life, and you were always positive. I never saw you once negative, and I never really pressed Brian on the story because no one really talked about it. And I don't know if it was taboo back then. I know you're more vocal about it now. I back in the day, I mean, that's a while ago. We were basically kids, really. You were always the most outgoing personality. Even your dad, God bless him. We used to talk about sports and the Red Sox and politics and all that. And you just had the best personality. And, this whole podcast is grit, determination, and perseverance. And that's why I'm really honored, Colonel is too, that you joined us today, because we're all just trying to get by these crazy times, right? And you never gave up. And God knows a weaker person would have given up a long time ago, John. So, yes. Hats off to you for living life and really succeeding in a lot of different areas that we want to get into. But if I remember the story, and I could have this wrong, John, but didn't it, if you hit the stair tread by like a millimeter less, it would have missed that did I get that right? Am I remembering that right?
Something, I just think that if my weight had shifted at the top just the other way, then none of this would have happened. I would have landed, the door would have opened, and I would have just sort of passed out probably right on that landing there. But, unfortunately, it went back the other way. And again, I don't remember falling. I just remember waking up and, lo and behold, a whole new life. I was telling, I'm back in therapy now, so I was up at the Great Kessler Institute. I know we'll talk about them later on. Yeah. But I was up there with one of the gals who was one of my PTs when I first got there. This was at the end of, I guess it was in October of 1992 when I first got there. Yeah. So I told her, I said, "Hey, Maureen, it's my birthday today." And she said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, it's kind of my second birthday because, it's a whole new life. Sure. You have to learn. I'm sure you guys have spoken with men and women who, thankfully, we hats off to them for their service that are injured on the battlefield. And they go through the same thing. I mean, you have to pick up the pieces after something terrible happens. Yeah. And, it was one of these things where if you told me that hiding in the corner and crying and whatnot was going to make my situation better, then guess what? Find me a spot. I'll go hide in the corner and cry. Yeah. But unfortunately, that's not the case. You sort of have to, after the initial shock wears off, that, whoa, my life has just completely changed. Right. You could go one way or the other. I had some friends at Kessler who wanted no part of it. They just completely checked out. They wouldn't go to therapy. They just thought that they were, garbage and that their life was over, and they wanted no part of it. And when you mentally check out, you physically check out. And so I just said, listen, this is really bad. I mean, I didn't have this planned out for the rest of my life. But, I'm not a down person. I like to say I like to live on the sunny side of the street. And so I just, picked up what I had and tried to make the most of it. And, it's not easy. God, it's hard as anything. Yeah. But, you can either go one way or the other. And I just chose not to be negative all the time.
Yeah, but John, that you got to give you some credit there, because your personality is one that's outgoing and giving. Whether you know it or not, you've surrounded yourself with great people and loving people who are attracted to you. So you could have been a jackass, and you might have fallen back into a hole, but because you're so outward and giving and never giving up, you attract people. And that means you have good people in your life who are there to encourage you, because I can't even imagine, John, but it's got to be difficult every day. But with positivity around you and your positivity you give out, you exude, thank God for that. Seriously.
Yeah, well, they told me early on at Kessler, one thing is they said, don't complain because no one will listen. Right. So that was one thing I never did. And there was always somebody there that was worse off than me. They said, okay, if you think you've got it bad, let's go down to room 121 when the people are on ventilators. Yeah. And they're having the machine breathe for them every 8 or 10 seconds. So they said, basically you got it pretty good. And I'm thinking, here's this able-bodied guy telling me I got it pretty good. If I could reach out and crack him, I wanted to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah, But he was right. He was right. I mean, somebody said one time, if we could take everybody's, problems that are here in this PT room working out and roll them up into a ball, you'd dive out of your wheelchair to grab your problems back. But some people just have it worse than you, and that's one way to look at it. And it's sort of been the way that I've tried to look at my lot in life, and you just kind of go from there. But it's not easy, I'll tell you. It starts from the minute my feet hit the floor in the morning. Something is, to try and get my pants on in the morning is a bear because I can't bend over. And can I get one finger to open up to open the milk crate? And can I get, it's just one thing leads to another. But, I under my breath, I say a few 4-letter words. Don't listen to this, Mom, if you're listening here. So I say them under my breath. But, again, I'd rather not have somebody here with me doing all these things. One thing I've really never been able to do is ask for help. I don't like to do that. I kind of think that doing that in some ways is throwing in the towel, and I don't want to do that.
Right.
I know that it's really not. And, later in life, I'm sure I'm going to need folks to help me out.
Yeah, but, we all are, by the way.
Yeah. But you just, I just kind of go with the flow, and I know at this point I have a sort of a routine. I know how things are going to go. And I joke around with my friends. I say, what I do each morning is I take everything that I know that I'm going to need for the day, and I just physically throw them on the floor, because I know that, if I try to pick it up, it's going to wind up there anyway. So I just take everything and throw it on the floor so I don't get frustrated.
That's good, John. Hey, so I do want to talk about Kessler a little bit. I mean, this is something we have in common, but nothing on the same plane. But as you know, I was on Wall Street for many years, and Colonel Nye knows a little bit. I think you know too, Johnny, through Brian, that mentally I blew my brains out at the end of my Wall Street career. But before that happened,
have they come back?
What's that?
Have you recovered?
Yeah, I'm still working on it, sir. But John, I found myself in Kessler because I think like the last year and a half, I had sciatica so bad that I would literally I couldn't sit down. All I could do was lie down. And it hurt so bad driving into work, into Jersey City, that I'd be crying. That's how much it hurt. So I went into a hospital. They gave me an MRI. They can't find anything. I'm like, well, something is wrong, because I literally have my Quotron on the ground, and I'm with my keyboard, and I'm lying on the ground to get off pain just to go to work. Wow. So I found Kessler, and they did every test you can possibly imagine. The electrodes, the more MRIs, the dyes, the pills, the Neurontin, all of that. Nothing took it away. I would say 3 or 4 months after I left Wall Street, my back pain disappeared forever. I haven't had back pain since.
Amazing. And
so
that's because of the folks at Kessler?
No, unfortunately, Kessler couldn't fix me, but that was all about stress.
Yeah, I was going to say, from just listening to, I think the commonality between the two of you is perspective.
Yeah.
I think John's got perspective, and you needed perspective.
Right.
I mean, for whatever reason, he has it innately. When that guy took him into when his PT or his doctor, whoever it was, that took him in to see the other patients, having perspective and putting yourself in that arena, makes it all clear. And I think what you needed was a change.
Yeah.
I mean, you just you needed a new perspective on life, is what it sounds like.
That's right, Colonel. And
I'm not a doctor.
No. But you play
one on TV.
But that's exactly it. Is I went kicking and screaming because I didn't want to give that lifestyle up. Even though I look back, I was completely miserable. But anyways, I mean, Kessler did their best for me, and I know they've done wonders for you, John. And Kessler even writes to me every now and then, and ask me how I'm doing and everything else, almost like a boilerplate letter. But they still reach out, and I know they've helped you immensely. And I'm glad you have that Northern Jersey for you, because as we were talking offline, Kessler's probably the most preeminent spinal cord institute in the world, correct?
We were lucky. After my injury, I went to Overlook Hospital, which was in Summit.
Right.
And then I guess when that happens, I don't know where it all comes from, but folks from the different rehabs, you find out somehow that somebody's had an accident, and it's almost like they start recruiting you. And so, the folks from the Miami project down in Miami, my parents had some phone conversations with them. There's a wonderful rehab hospital in Colorado called Craig, which is one of the top ones. There's one in Atlanta called Shepherd, is a great rehab. But here was one that was like 10 miles from my house, or not even 10 miles, like 5 miles from my house. I can't tell you how many times, gentlemen, that growing up, either through youth sports or in high school, my team bus drove by Kessler Institute with up on the hill there. And I never really looked. I never really knew what went on up there. And I must have gone by it 100 times, with my buddies, and we're fooling around in the back of the school bus, and never thinking what was going on up on the hill, and then never thinking that I would one day, not only be an inpatient there, but still be getting outpatient therapy there almost 30 years after my accident. It was amazing. And the best part about it, as I said, was that it was so close to home, so that my parents could be there pretty much every day. Yeah. My buddies, were there constantly. I'm actually going to speak with two of my besties tonight for my podcast. We're going to do like a trip down memory lane for the 28th anniversary. Some guys that were just there every single day. I mean, it was amazing. One guy I kind of figured would be in my corner. Another guy who was a friend, but not like I thought was. And he hasn't really left my side in all these years. He's on the phone with me and, just didn't let me fall through the cracks. And because that was a tough time. I was 24 years old, and guys were, just kind of meeting their wives maybe and dating and trying to make it in the city. I mean, you were working on Wall Street. Brian was working on Wall Street. And, here I am laying flat on my back. I can't even wiggle my toes. And it was like, life was sort of passing me by a little bit. But, some of these guys just would not let that happen. I remember on weekends, a lot of the fellas that were living up on the Upper West Side of New York, they would take the bus out, and there was a big main gathering space at Kessler. They called it the Rotunda, and they had a television set in there, and there would be 25 guys all screaming, watching college football on a Saturday afternoon. So it kind of felt like I was back in my den, or if I was at somebody's house, the only thing that was missing was all the beer, I guess.
Right. So that leads us into a good segue, John, is you are a sports fanatic. Why don't you talk a little bit about where you went to college and what you were going to do and what was lined up for you before your accident or incident on this day of days?
I graduated from Providence College in Rhode Island.
The Friars?
The Friars, yes. I'm a Friar through and through. It started my sophomore year. I kind of really didn't know what the heck I wanted to do. And I can remember listening to my dad when I was a kid talking on the phone, and, people just on the other end laughing and him laughing and back and forth kibitzing around. And I remember I went in and I said, Dad, what do you do? What are you doing? And he said, John, I'm in the people business. And that really stuck with me because, listen, I will readily admit I'm not the brightest bulb on the Christmas tree. I didn't do great on my SATs. I'm not a math guy. I'm not, one of these people with a photogenic memory. Right. But I think I can relate to people, and I can attract people to me. And, with my personality and my joking around, I sort of put people at ease. But I was always a sports guy. And I thought, how can I kind of put the two of those things together? And a friend of mine had just finished up doing an internship for one of her classes, and she worked at the local ABC TV affiliate in downtown Providence. And she interned for the sports guy. And I said, wow, I got to get in on some of that. So I wound up doing it as an internship second semester of my sophomore year. Absolutely loved it. And then wound up staying on working shifts all through my junior and senior year. So nice. Talk about having real life experience. I mean, most people were, in the books and they were doing that stuff. And I was actually working and learning the business. And, ESPN was sort of the gold standard at the time.
Yeah.
This is back in, the late 80s and, early 90s.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that was sort of always the goal, was to one day, work for the worldwide leader in sports, because before they've become, this conglomerate now where they're all over the place. But right after graduation, I went to a buddy of mine was graduating himself from the United States Naval Academy down at Annapolis. And it was a brand new company that had just started up called Sports News Network, SNN. And they were based down in Arlington, Virginia, in the Gannett buildings down there. Somehow I knew somebody that was just starting there, and they were able to get me an interview. So I went down for my buddy's graduation, and the day before that, swooped into Arlington, did an interview with them. It went really well. And by the time I got home, they had offered me a position, and so I was driving back down to Arlington, and that was a fun summer. I lived with my friend. He was working at NASA for the summer, so we were in Greenbelt, Maryland, and I had about a 45-minute drive to and fro. I was working crazy hours, 4 in the afternoon to like 2, 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
And then driving home that 45 minutes, not knowing where the heck I was. Sometimes waking up 2, 3 exits further than I needed to be. Thank God I didn't crash.
Right.
Yeah, so I worked there for about a year and a half. Then the company moved back to New Jersey, which was great. But the bad news was they were bleeding money and wound up going bankrupt probably about a year and change into my working there. So okay, it was like, here's your dream job for about a year, and now you're out on your keister again without anything to do. And I still had the urge. I still wanted to try the whole ESPN thing. And in the interim, my sister had been working for Nabisco, so I picked up some hours as a sales rep there, basically slinging cookies and crackers and all the different supermarkets up and down New Jersey during the day. And then they were nice enough to, whenever I had a job interview or if I had something, they would let me go and do that. So that was cool. And I was driving home from work one day, and I heard something on the radio for something called Sports Careers. And basically it was just a huge job fair. And this one was happening. They were having one in June of 1992, and it was out in San Diego. Wow, did I love San Diego.
Yeah, who doesn't?
I've never been there before, and what an amazing place. And so ESPN was there, and I said, Mom and Dad, if this is what I want to do, I got to go out there and see if I could charm their pants off, And so I took a whole bunch of resumes with me. There were 600 people there, and there were folks from all walks of sports, whether you wanted to work for Major League Baseball, the NBA, the NHL, Nike, Reebok, Adidas, anything you could think of. And if you want, a lot of them were interviewing, so they had an envelope on their table. So of course, the ESPN was there, and you had 600 resumes. Everybody wanted to interview for them, as you could imagine.
Yeah.
So the next day they had a job board, and they had 3 names on the board. One of them, luckily, was John Joseph McAleavey, and I was able to get one of the interviews. I guess it was the experience that I had at SNN that was really good, that they must have liked that. So I interviewed there with the head of human resources for ESPN. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie Diner. Did you ever see the movie Diner?
It's one of my favorites.
Okay. The scene where he's interviewing his wife all about the Baltimore Colts, and she's got to know all about the football team?
I put my prospective son-in-law through the exact same experience.
Okay. Well, that was what this was like. I sat down, we shook hands, and the next thing I know, okay, tell me about all the backup quarterbacks in the AFC Central. And who's going to win the Vezina Trophy? Now, one sport that I don't really follow is hockey. So I was able to just pull that one out of my rear end. I picked a goaltender. I said Mike Richter from the Rangers. And then, of course, I ran back to my room. I said, was that the goaltender award? So I lucked out on that one. It was, tell me about all the relief pitchers in the National League West, and who's going to win the Heisman Trophy, and who did win the Heisman Trophy the next year. I mean, it was exhausting.
I bet.
Yeah. And so that was about an hour, and that was in June of '92. I subsequently flew home. In early August, I called up to Bristol, to see if there was any movement, and I spoke with the gentleman's secretary, and she said, "Well, you must have done pretty well. You jumped over about 50 people on the list of people that might get a job here." Yeah, so that was early August. Unfortunately, the 19th rolls around. I have my fall, and it just so happened it was like poetic justice. My first day that I arrived at Kessler's when they called and said, your ship has come in and you got the job. And I thought, oh, great, I can't even wiggle my toes right now.
Yeah. Wow.
Now, did they ever get back in touch with you to see, check on you or anything?
Colonel, I actually did make a visit. They were really good at the time. They didn't know what they had because they hadn't met me, unfortunately, other than the one guy that I interviewed with. I think it would have been a different story if I had already started working there and had built some friendships.
Right.
But they sent down a couple of huge banners, one of those, Baseball Tonight banners, and everybody signed it. All the bigwigs at the time, the Chris Bermans and the Dan Patricks, and a couple of them actually called and spoke with me. And I did actually go to visit with one of my occupational therapists, it's not soon after, but probably a year or so after, to see if maybe I could still get back up there and work. But, at that point, my priorities had really changed.
Right.
And first and foremost, I didn't think that I wanted to be, live. I didn't think I could live on my own. I didn't want to have somebody live with me, as, we already covered that. I don't want somebody really helping me to do everything on my own. And, it just didn't hold the appeal that it once did, because everything had changed. The rug had sort of been pulled out from under me. And so didn't have that driving force to get up there, but they were very nice. And as I said, they reached out for me as much as they could.
Now, do you still follow sports that in-depthly that you could take that challenge again?
Something, Colonel, this is going to sound really weird, but the older I get, the less it means to me.
Right.
I still keep my eye on stuff. As Neal mentioned, I'm a Red Sox fan, and this is a good year to take off from watching them because they're horrible. But, it doesn't hold the same vigor that it did when I was younger, and I guess I attribute it to just being older. I don't know what it is, but I still follow it, and I work with some friends. I have two guys I need to mention who really took me under their wing over a decade ago. Matt Laughlin and Steve Titchener. They work on a website that's called More Sports Now. It's www.moresportsnow.com. And they've given me the opportunity to write a blog. I've written a blog for a couple of years called My Two Cents, SENSE, which I thought was pretty cute at the time. And so I used to riff on different things that were happening at the time. Matt Laughlin is actually the radio play-by-play voice of the New Jersey Devils. And he and Steve Titchener are neighbors. They live right across the street from each other, and they're both big sports guys. And they said, let's, put this little thing together. And, we're still trying to get it off the ground. We do a podcast at least once or twice a week. We do, we cover both sides of the Hudson. So we're based here in the New Jersey area. We do some podcasts. We cover local golf events. We shoot the video for that. As I said, I write a blog. I haven't done one in a while, but they really gave me an opportunity to keep myself involved in sports, and I'm indebted to them. They've been great friends. Such a big help for me through the years.
That's awesome. So,
I was just going to say, I grew up obviously like most young men, idolizing. It's not so much that I don't follow the sports anymore. I don't idolize any of the players anymore.
Right.
You kind of grow out of that.
Yes.
Yeah. So Colonel John, we got to take a break here for a moment. John, before we take a break, I really want to get into your new venture with the QuadCast that you developed on your own. And I'd like to talk about your nonprofit that's named after you and what you do with that. And we can go from there. But right now, we just want to take a moment to break away and talk about special ops excursions. That if you can go to our website, podcaststrength.com, and look at the bottom and look at special op excursions. There's a donate button and there's an info button. Everything we do goes right back to special op excursions, and every click that you guys do and everything you watch goes, and if you want to donate, goes to special op excursions. So let's take a break right now. Okay, everyone. So we're back with Johnny McAleavey with Colonel Nye, and we've gotten deep into some personal life situations with John has just put reality smack in our face about how it can always be worse. And if you think you have it bad, John has a story to tell you. I think you've heard over the past half hour, and he realizes that it could be worse for him too. And that's all about what we're trying to do with these podcasts with Colonel Nye and myself is grit, determination, and perseverance. So, John, with that, I really want to talk to you about your QuadCast, why you named it and what you're doing, and see if Colonel Nye and I can push people to your podcast and help you out as best we can. So why don't you take it away?
Well, I would appreciate anything that you can do. Is I like to tell folks that I'm trying to build my audience 2 ears at a time. So if I can get as many ears on it as possible. This is something that I have talked about ad nauseum for, it's got to be over a decade now. And this is right around when podcasts started coming about. And I sort of thought that maybe I could couple my background sort of in, television and marketing and editing of scripts and highlights and my gift of gab. I get back to my dad being in the people business. I can certainly talk. And then I thought, this could be an avenue for me because, as I told you guys earlier, I really have little use of my arms, hands, and fingers. So to work like a regular job is really not in the cards for me. So I thought, and I kept talking about this, I'm going to do a podcast that deals with folks like me. I'm going to do a podcast that deals with, and I would tell them over and over. And then I'd bump into them a year later and they'd say, hey, John, how's that podcast going? And I'd say, oh, I haven't bought the equipment yet, or I'm still looking into it, which meant I was doing nothing.
Right.
And what happened was this lockdown, this global pandemic that has enveloped the whole world here, sort of gave me the impetus to say, you know what? I'm sitting around on my butt here, not doing anything. And I've got so many people who are sick of hearing this story that I'm going to stick it to everybody and I'm going to do it. And I really didn't really know what the recipe was going to be. I bought a $95 condenser microphone. I had a laptop computer. I bought an audio interface, which was $150. And I went after one of the biggest guys that I knew. There was a Kessler who is an amazing advocate. I called him up and I said, hey, Scott, I'm going to do this, and I'd love for you to be my first guest.
Awesome.
And I started thinking about, little catchphrases. I like to think of myself as a pretty, witty guy. And so I came up with the QuadCasts. It sort of rhymes with podcast. And I am a quad because all 4 of my limbs were affected. So, I sort of had a take on that. My friends at Kessler thought that was cute. And so I had that. And then my tagline was, I'm going to, provide a 30 to 45 minute session of OT and PT for the soul. And I say that the show is mainly for and about folks like me who have had a spinal cord injury, but it's really for anyone that just wants to be inspired, because I like to bring people on that have had something terrible happen to them, that are not hiding in the closet and that are doing remarkable things. And you hear their stories, and it really is something that's starting to resonate with folks that, are not injured. And they listen and they think, my God, my boss is a pain in the neck, or my car doesn't run well. Those are my biggest problems. You listen to some of these people and you're like, wow, I've certainly got the world by the you-know-whats. And so it's really starting to catch on, and I'm hoping to continue to build my audience.
Yeah. So Colonel, can you guess what I'm thinking now?
Yeah, go right ahead. I know exactly what you're going to say.
Yep. So, John, I've been trying to reach out unsuccessfully, but this is a call to action, and I'll send her this video. Ali Stroker, a Tony Award winner, has been in the wheelchair since she's been, I believe, 2 years old. Colonel, does that ring a bell to you?
Yeah, just about right.
Yeah. So first person, woman or man, to ever win a Tony in a wheelchair. I think any disability, really. She's amazing. I think you know of her, John.
I do. Yes.
Yep. So I will. I promise you, I will get this out to her email tonight. I'll say, watch. You got to see this guy. And
she was our first interview, wasn't she?
She was our first interview with her dad, Coach Stroker, who his life changed the day of her accident as well. And again, like you, John, they never quit, and they excelled. Both of them excelled, and they could have taken a travesty and just, buried themselves in a hole, and they kept on going. And not only that, excelling in everything they do. So I'll send this out to Coach Stroker. I'll send this out to Allie. Hopefully we get you a rock star guest here within a month or so.
That would be great. And, if you can think of any other folks, some of the folks, you speak with, folks in the military. If you could turn me on to some of the injured vets I'd love to tell their story as well. It's basically, I'm telling a story each and every week.
Right.
I'm going to have on next week one of my doctors who, in his third year of medical school, was playing rugby and injured his neck at the C5 area and is now completely paralyzed from his chest down. And he took a year off from school, and he went back, and he's now a doctor working in the field. So I tell him, you're not only a member, you're a client too. So
right,
he's amazing. Stories like that. There's a guy who could have said, how am I going to go back to school when I can't take a note? I can't turn a page in a book. I can't do all these things. But there he goes. He went back, and he's been a doctor now for a number of years. He's amazing. So he'll be on with me next week. I've had Mikey Nichols on. I don't know if you know that name, Mikey. They have a game for him every year, the Mikey Strong game that Boomer Esiason and the folks out here put it on. He got injured playing hockey. He got hurt back in high school. I've had some folks from something called the Challenged Athletes Foundation that was founded out in San Diego again, where they help families who have children who have had either spinal cord injuries or amputations or disease. And they get them involved in sports. You think as a parent, here's your child who's got, spina bifida or some severe cerebral palsy, and they can't do a team sport like in their local town. You can't just sign them up for your rec department. But this outfit has sports for them, has teams, and gets them involved. And that's what it does for a family, and what it does for someone that can still participate. Is it puts a big old smile on their face, which is all anybody really wants.
John, are you familiar with a guy named Romy Camargo?
I don't know that name.
All right, he's down in Tampa. He was a Army Green Beret who was injured severely, quadriplegic. I don't know how many years ago now. I don't. I'd be guessing if I guess the year. But severely, and he was told he would, basically never walk, talk, do anything again. Yeah. He is now the founder, CEO, whatever his title is, of his own spinal cord recovery center. Stay in step spinal recovery. I'm messing up the name, but he's in a chair, but he's running the show.
Amazing.
That is amazing. Absolutely amazing.
I
will put him in touch with you.
That would be great.
Just so you know him too. You can talk to him. He is when you start talking inspirational, those kinds of things. His story is unbelievable.
That would be great. Yeah. What I like to say is another spinal cord injury survivor and thriver. You can't stop. You got to try and. It's not going to be the same. No one says your life is ever going to be the same, but it doesn't have to go into the toilet just because something like this has happened to you.
That's right, John.
I agree.
So, Colonel, I think together we'll talk offline about this, but we do know some adaptive athletes through Spartan and some other places that we might be able to introduce John to as well and get that back in the sports realm. Right?
And we've also got the guys down in the military hunt club, or the Black Dagger Military Hunt Club.
Oh, that's great.
Again, down in Tampa, all of those guys are, challenged one way or the other.
Yeah. Right. And, everybody's got a story. Everybody's got a story. And I've learned that people like to tell them, they want an opportunity to, for some folks, it's cathartic to get it off their chest. I know for me, when I have somebody on, for each show, I'll do like a 5 to 10 minute intro before I bring the guest on. And a lot of it has to do with, what's going on with my world and how it affects me and how, the person that I'm bringing on I'll try to draw a parallel to how I'm doing or how my situation is. So, if people want to come on and tell their story, that would be great. If I could just plug it, I have a website for the show where you could find it. It's www.quadcast.org, O-R-G, and it's QUADCAST. And the show can be found on a number of different hosts. I'm on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Overcast, I think is one, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and Spotify. So there's a whole bunch of them. I said there's 8 or as many people that listen to my show each week.
In the same boat, John. We're just putting our best foot forward, and hopefully it catches on.
That's it.
Yeah, let's do this again. So that's QuadCast.org.
www.quadcast.org.
Okay.
You can find all of my archived shows are there.
Great.
And then if you go on to one of those posts that I mentioned, you can click subscribe. And I think each and every time I have one hot out of the oven, it'll pop into your email list.
It's phenomenal. That's great.
Yeah.
So, John, let's talk a little bit about. So, when you were injured, the accident, incident, whatever we want to call it, today is the day of days. Someone, I don't know who did it. You can talk about it. Set up a nonprofit for you, and then you went on and said, "I don't really need this," and you do something with all those funds. So, let's talk about the nonprofit that's based on your name and what you did with it, and now what you're doing with it, if you don't mind.
Yes. Well, I was lucky enough to have some amazing neighbors and family friends. And they sort of jumped into action when all this was going on. As you can imagine, I was the one laying in bed, so I was just trying to figure out, the license plate on the freight train that ran me over.
Right.
So I was doing that and trying to get better at the time. And my parents were just coming to visit me all the time. So they were in the hospital and dealing with doctors and insurance companies who want to kick you out of the hospital every Friday. They wanted to bounce you out. And so these great family and friends got together and they put together, they had a very highly catchy name, the John McAleavey Jr. Fund. And so they were very creative, as you can tell.
Right.
But what they did is they had some amazing benefits at the Hilton in Short Hills, which is a really beautiful, classy place. And
right.
They wound up packing the place. And it was weird for me because, here I come. I was still an inpatient at the time. And they came up and put a coat and tie on me. I think I was still in a wheelchair at the time.
Yeah.
And it was just something weird. It felt like, hey, come and pay like $100 to come and get your picture taken with me or come and hang out with John. It just felt so weird.
Right.
And the whole vibe about asking money to come and help me out. But what happened was I think we had maybe 2 or 3 of them. And then once we stopped doing them, I would get phone calls from friends like, dude, when are we going to have that big party again? It was like a big reunion.
Love it.
People would come back from high school and they thought it was like a big reunion. I said, all right, you take a fall and then we'll come to your thing. I don't want to keep doing it for me. I'll come to your benefit.
Right.
But, I guess early on the thought was that who knows where these medical bills are going to go, and for to help defray the cost, I think that's why people wanted to put a little bankroll behind the family, and that was the whole genesis of where that all came from.
Right.
So early on, I think it was used to help me out. Again, it sort of have kept our family in the dark about it. I don't even know how much money was in there, and luckily through the years there really hasn't been anything that we've needed to really dive into it to really help me for. And so pretty soon after the fall, we have started to spin it off now to we will help pay medical and physical costs for people who have had spinal cord injuries to help the uninsured people. And over the years, we've donated wheelchairs. We've donated cushions for wheelchairs, which are very expensive. We've donated shower chairs, which are hard to come by and very expensive. We have donated hours for people to take driving lessons again, to get behind the wheel. We've also donated one guy a racing chair. and he wound up a Philadelphia road race with the chair that we from. So I think we've helped well over 30 people over the years, and it's a fulfilling thing, and it's something that has been a nice offshoot that was started out to help me, but to sort of share the wealth, because we're all in this together. And if we can help out someone in need, I always say a friend in need is a friend indeed. So it's been something that has been really good, and puts a lot of people at ease that might not have other recourse to get what they need.
Exactly. So, Colonel, John is 2 steps behind us when it comes to technology. So I'm going to have him read out again the name of the organization, and he's old school. He has snail mail website. So, John, why don't you go through it 2 or 3 times so people can get it and hopefully send out a check so you can help other people.
Sure. And you know what? I actually have an address. I'm going to give you an address where you can send it.
There you go.
It is the John McAleavey, and that's spelled MC, capital ALEA, V as in Victory, EY, McAleavey, the John McAleavey Jr. Fund. And you could send donations to 30 Clinton, CLINTON Avenue. That's in New Providence, New Jersey. And the zip code is 07974. It is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and all donations are tax deductible. So if you want to help out some folks that are down on their luck, the more the merrier. That would be.
That's awesome, John. And then now that we're on YouTube, we'll put up a card, I guess you call it, or a screen that lists the name of the organization and the address, so people can screenshot it or whatever, and hopefully they can send out $5 or $1,000 to help out people in need. So, Colonel, unfortunately, it's the end of our time here. It's been great catching up with Johnny Mac. I haven't seen his face in a few years, but do you want to have any last parting wisdom or comments?
No, I just want to thank him for coming on. I mean, again, this is it's a tremendous story, and it's one people need to hear. And again, it's ones we kind of try to concentrate on, but you could have given up at any step along the way. I mean, right from the initial fall to being in the rehab to, we didn't even get into your coaching or how you're doing, how you do that. But just from listening to your positivity and your perspective, I think is really what people need to hear. The whole, it's funny. I had an uncle, my only uncle, who used to, no matter what was happening, would always say it could be worse. I worked with, he was a construction guy, and I went to work with him one year, and my God, weather was terrible or whatever. And he'd look over and say, it could be raining. Or it could be, we could have another truck to unload. Stop. Yes, it could be worse. That was always how he approached everything. So, and I think that's important for people to understand, and then during the good times, kind of appreciate what you have. The flip side of that, to look around and say, hey, I'm doing okay here. This is all right, all things considered. So listen, it was an honor talking to you. I'll get you that, link you up with Romy down there in Tampa. I think you guys will hit it off. You got a lot in common, and I just wish you great luck in whatever you're doing.
Thank you very much, Colonel. It's been a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate the platform, and I enjoy listening to your show each week. What you guys are doing, it's great. I mean, in the world we're living in now, I mean, who couldn't use a little positivity and inspiring stories? It's really what we need, because things are really rough out there right now, and I appreciate it, Neil. It's always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you for the heads up.
You got it, man. And hang on with us for a little bit here, John. I'll hit the end button in a second. But as always, at the end of our show, we need to talk about a couple of people. One incredible human being, Michelle Burr from In Bloom Consulting. It's a long story, and people who have heard us over the weeks know she's in the nonprofit world, and anything you need to know about nonprofits, Michelle Burr from In Bloom Consulting can help you. whether it's a startup, whether it's middle of the road, whether it's stagnant. Unfortunately, during these times, there are some nonprofits that are closing because they just can't get donations in or get the word out right now because everyone's fearful of everything. So again, Michelle Burr is just an amazing, amazing human being at In Bloom Consulting. And the reason Colonel Nye and I do this every week is to help out other people. And we don't take a penny from any of this. Everything coming in from the clicks and the viewerships, and hopefully the donation button you hit on our website goes to Special Ops Excursions. It's an incredible outfit. Scott Graves runs it. He gave up a lucrative career to give back to special operations heroes, hunting and fishing, to get their minds off of what they do on a daily basis, which is we never talk about what they do. They're always in secret, and you've got some good men doing some things that take care of some bad people, and they need our support as well. So Scott Graves at Special Ops Excursions. Go to podcaststrength.com to see the donation button and all the information you need to see of his nonprofit. And I can tell you with certainty the IRS forms that he fills out for the 501c3B, he's in the 90% range, 94, 95% of every dollar goes to programming, not expenses or marketing. So with that, thank you everyone for listening. Johnny Mac, you're awesome. Hang on there for a second. Colonel Nye, as always, it's awesome talking to you. And we'll be back next week. Thanks, everyone.
All right, guys.
Strength in Numbers is produced by Be Viral Production. Find out how Be Viral can produce your next show, commercial, or podcast at www.beviralproduction.com.